double up. But this year there was an extra special one in Israel because Shavuot was on not Shavuot, Pesach. Excuse me. The last day of Pesach was on Friday. No, hang on. How come it doesn't work for me? I'm looking at this year. Shvi'i shel Pesach. Yeah, it was on Friday. So there's no problem. Pesach finished. And then we have Shabbat. So we, in Israel, we read Parashat Acharei Mot. Where were we? Acharei Mot. Yeah, in the middle. We read Acharei Mot, the day after Pesach. The day after Pesach. But in Chutz La'aretz, they have 2 days of Yom Tov. There's a custom that outside the land of Israel, they keep 2 of each of the days because it was so far away. In the time when they didn't have a set calendar, they didn't hear which was the proper day for the festival. The custom is we keep 2 days. So they didn't read Parashat Acharei Mot. So that means they read a special reading for the holiday of Pesach. The following week, we went on. We already read Acharei Mot. So the following week, we read Kedoshim. In Chutz La'aretz, they read Acharei Mot. And from then till now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 weeks in 3 months. Whoever is in Chutz La'aretz is reading the Parsha, not the same one as the Jews in Israel. The Jews in Israel are always one ahead. So last week we read Parashat Matot, right? They read Pinchas. This week they read Matot Mas'ei. And we read only Mas'ei. And that's how they catch up with us.
And then this year we will read together those 2.
But
we too.
No. We read Matot last week. Mas'ei this week.
54 weeks. And we have 50.
True. But we have no problem this year because it's a leap year. We didn't do any of these joining up. All these joining up, they were each separate each week. We didn't have Vayakal Pekudei together, Trumat Etzaveh, because we have a whole extra month.
That means that we have extra time, or how?
We have more than 52 weeks a year. We have 56 weeks a year.
What?
56 weeks and only 54 parshiot. So we don't need to join them together. So the way it fits is that 2 of the days out of the 56 were taken up by holidays. Like the first day of Pesach. The first day of Pesach was a Shabbat. So we were left with 55 weeks. And then again, Shavuot, I believe, was on Shabbat. And so we are left with 54 weeks. Perfect! 54 weeks. We did the 54 parsha without any doubling up. This year, the only people to double up is in Chutz La'aretz for those 12 weeks in between Acharei Mot and Matot Masei. They were behind us for 12 weeks, and this time they double up Matot Masei when we don't.
That's the system. I got it.
They always double up Matot Masei.
Usually, I think I can't say ever because I don't know the calendar that well to say that they always double up. Usually, these are all doubled up. But because it's a leap year, we have extra 4 weeks to play with. We can finish all 54 parshiot in 56 weeks. It works out. We don't have to double up any of them. Yeah.
How often we have a leap year?
How often is a leap year? Was it?
We talked about it.
4 times, was it 7 times out of 19? I think it's 7 out of 19 years we have a leap year. But we did talk about it because why do we need a leap year? Because
we are short of the.
Yeah.
We have different calendars.
The sun takes 365 days.
We go by moon.
But the moon is 12 months, 12 times 29 and a half. So some are 29, some are 30. But either way, what's 30 times 12? Huh?
We're 360.
360, so we're off by a few days, by 5 days. Even if we make them all 30s, we're off by 7 days, we're off by 8 days. Every year, we're off by like 10 days. So 1 year, no problem. 2 years, 3. After 3 years, we need to make up a whole month. This is approximately, I was just doing a rough approximation. But that's why we have the concept of a leap year, because we have to have the solar year of the sun match the lunar year of the, because the Torah says the festival of Pesach has to always be in the Aviv. The Aviv is the spring. And it's always in the month of Nisan. Our festivals are by the lunar calendar, right? We have 12 months of the moon. We follow the moon for our calendar, but it's got to be the season. The seasons depend on the sun. The solar calendar, 365 days. So we have to make a mix.
We add the months before Nisan or after?
We add the months before Nisan. Yeah, we add usually what's the month that we add? Adar.
Adar.
Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni. This year we had 2 Adars. I don't know if you remember.
Remember.
Tov, Yofi. So this was just a little review of the Parshot of the week. What's the Parsha this week? Maseh. Hey, you're such an Israeli Jew. Good. It's a good thing. You're Israeli. If you're in Chutz La'aretz, you would say Matot Maseh. Double Parsha. There they have to catch up. They do double. They do Matot and Maseh this week.
We never catch up in Israel.
You came 10 minutes too late. We just had a whole description of here. You know, you can have this if you like. And most years we do join double up Parshiot.
Because of the second Adar this year, right?
This year, because of the second Adar, we don't have to join up. We don't have to double up.
How often in the 19-year cycle are there times, whether in Chutz La'aretz or here in Eretz Israel, where you have to do a double parasha?
Most years. I'd say 90% of years there's a double parsha.
Even in Eretz Israel?
Even in Eretz Israel. Whenever there's a leap year, well, we said a leap year is what? A 7 out of 19 years? So those 7 times out of 19, usually we don't have to double up. So whenever there's a leap year, we don't double up parshas.
No, but there's only Shnei Yamim Tovim in Chutz La'aretz. How do you get like daily? We have Shnei Yamim Tovim.
So then it depends. Does one of the holidays, without the Yom Tov Sheni, the Yom Tov Rishon, does it fall on Shabbat or not? You understand?
So if it falls on Shabbat, then that means...
Then you're getting closer. Like we said, usually you have 54 parshot and 52 weeks. You need to double 1 or 2 up for sure. But if you have 56 weeks, because you've got an extra month, so you've got 56 weeks and only 54 parshot. You don't have to double up anything, right? Unless you have 1 or 2 holidays, more than 2 holidays on Shabbat, you're going to have to double up. This year, I think we only had 2 holidays on Shabbat. I think it was Pesach and Shavuot. We're on Shabbat, and that's why we have exactly 54 weeks, and exactly to read a parsha, and exactly 54 parsha. So we don't double up any of them. I'll push it up. Yeah, sure, you can push it up. Sure, thank you. Thank you. Okay, is that clear? So what's the parsha this week? Maseh. Here we are in Israel. People listening to us on YouTube, who knows? Maybe they're not in Israel. For you guys in Chutz La'aretz, it's Matot Maseh. Means you have to stay in shul longer. The Torah reading is longer for you this week, which is okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and when we call for the reading that we read most time, like 2 in the like.
We only have 7 aliyot. For each one, we do a little longer.
Not like exactly 2.
It's not exactly. Yeah, it's a little longer. If you notice in the Chumash, it tells you how to divide up into 7, right? Sheni, Shlishi, Revi. It says in little words. It says. Let's look at it. Everybody, grab a Chumash. Open up Parashat Maseh. This week's parsha. It's confusing, huh? This Jewish Torah reading cycle.
What was the Torah reading for today? How do I know?
Every morning, on Monday and Thursday, we read the beginning of the parsha of the week.
What comes at the beginning? Which aliyah?
The first aliyah. The first out of the 7 is usually divided up into 3.
Oh, yeah. So this is the first of the week.
This is the first of the week. But let's look at
What about
Parashat
Shabbat when we do it?
Matot. Go to page 313. Also Mincha. We do the first aliyah of the next parsha, divided into 3. Look at page 313. Okay, Parashat Matot. This is last week's parsha. Okay? So you see it starts off, and Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes. Page 313. Okay? And then go all the way, please, to this is actually a mistake. If you turn to the next page, 314, at the bottom, where at the beginning of chapter, what is this, chapter 31? Beginning of chapter 1, it should say Sheni. Beginning of chapter 31. Do you have Sheni?
Sheni.
Right. In mine, it doesn't say Sheni because it's just an old, not very well edited
In the first
text.
pasuk, in the Hebrew text?
It should, in between. In between. You can write it in here. I'll write it in.
Sheni.
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 It's long.
Why? How do I know? Because if you go to the next page, over here it says Shlishi. So they just skipped out Sheni for some reason. Right? Most parsha they tell you when is the second aliyah and when is the third aliyah. So look on page 315. 7 lines from the end of the page. You see that? It says in between the verses of the Torah, it said the word Shlishi. But wait, it says something else.
Sheni.
Sheni kashehein mechubarim. It says when. What does it mean? Hein mechubarim. Mechubar means connected. When they are connected, what's they? The parshot are connected when they're doubled up. It's not going to be shlishi over here. It's going to be sheni. What does that mean? For the first reader from the beginning of parsha on 313, we don't stop here like we usually do. We go all the way till here. This is going to be sheni on those weeks when it's doubled up. So it tells you, when it's combined, stop here. When it's not combined, stop there. So in Chutz La'aretz, they're going to have the first reader go all the way to here. They did. That's what they're going to do this week. Whereas,
who made the...
it's a good question. I think it's got to be from the Talmudic era, even before the Gonim, but maybe it was formalized by the Gonim. You have a good intuition there. I think it was formalized. Let's look at Parshat Masa'eh as well. Now go to this week's Parsha for...
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sheni.
Yeah.
And you go to Shlishi.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It says in brackets underneath Shni.
Sheni, that's what I was just explaining. That the brackets underneath
Right.
is for when they're combined.
Okay, just clear.
When they're combined, this is not the third aliyah. It's the end of the second aliyah. Okay, now let's go to this week's parsha, Parashat Masa'eh. That's page 321. See that at the beginning? Masa'eh. Go down about 20 lines and you see Sheni. I'm circling it here so you can see. You see this? Page 321. You have Masa'eh, right? It's chapter 33, verse 10. Verse 11 is the beginning of the second reading. So how many pages? We did about 10 verses for the first ole, it's called, the first aliyah. The first guy who's called up. Aliyah means to go up to Israel, to move to Israel. It's also called aliyah. Aliyah to the Torah. Always go up to something that's important. The Torah is important. The land of Israel is important. So moving to the land of Israel is called, not emigration. It's called aliyah.
That's why there's also
called repatriation, like a second...
Yeah, but we, in the tradition, we say it's aliyah.
Is that why there's
Ascent, exactly.
Bima? It's elevated movements.
Also because it's elevated, but because of the Torah is considered to be high in value.
That's the reason the Bema is elevated, because the Torah.
Also maybe because people could hear better if it's
Maybe
elevated.
it's sensitive,
Yeah, but it's interesting. Well, I think it's patterned after the Beit HaMikdash, where they had the Mizbeach, the altar was in the center of the Beit HaMikdash, and that was elevated. We know there was a ramp going up, so we sort of pattern our shul after the Beit HaMikdash. Anyways, turn the page. After Sheni, turn the page and look for Shlishi. Oh, I see it. 322 at the bottom. I'm circling it. Shlishi. You see that at the end of the page. It's verse 49. The end of verse 49 of chapter 33. You see it says Shlishi. Can you see that? Page 322.
38. You have 49 in New text.
At the end of the verse 49, it should say Shlishi. You see Shlishi? But then it says something afterwards. What does it say? Chamishi keshehen mechubarim. That means the beginning of the fifth aliyah when they are joined. Fifth aliyah? We're just up to the third section. How did we skip to the five? Who can explain it to me?
What?
Why is it the fifth?
Because we have
Where's the first, second, and third, and fourth?
Maybe it's also not the.
No, this is fine. This is
before,
perfect.
It's before.
Where's before?
In Matok.
Exactly, in Matot. In Chutz La'aretz this week, they're reading all of Matot, dividing it up, and Masay, dividing it up into 7. So now we've read the first 4 aliyot were from Matot. Chamishi, Shishi, and Shvi'i, the last 3 are going to be from Masay. They join the 2 parshiyot together, and so they have to divide it up differently. So for us, here we have the third reader starting here. Then in Chutz La'aretz, it's already the 5th reader, because they had 4 readers in the first parsha of Matot, which we read last week. Hope that's clear. Yeah.
And the Rishon we read here. We don't count.
That's correct. We started at the beginning of Mas A.
That's made 7.
That makes 7. Right. Rishon is the first aliyah. It doesn't say anywhere Rishon. Everybody knows it's the beginning of the parsha. It's
always
Rishon.
like
It's
this.
always Rishon.
It's always Rishon.
Beginning of the parsha is always Rishon. This year, for the people in Chutz La'aretz, their Rishon is beginning of Matot. Beginning of what we read last week.
And how they go? Oh yeah, but they joined the
And that's why their Rishon goes a little bit longer than what we did last week. That's what I showed you in Parshat Matot. Now I'm showing you in this week. So you always can see whether or not they're joined or not, where you should stop, where you should divide up the 7 aliyot. There's actually rules about how to divide up aliyot. Sometimes you might have seen that they actually have more than 7. You ever been to shul where they have more than 7 people called to the Torah? It happens sometimes on a bar mitzvah. Ariel, I'm sure you've seen it, no? When they call up, I've been to shul, sometimes they call up 10 people. 11 people, 12 people.
10.
What's going on here?
family or
They want to honor more people. They want to honor the uncle and the brother, and they want to. It's a family celebration, so they want to. Is that allowed? Yes, it is allowed. You can divide it up no less than 7 on Shabbat, but no more than will make everybody fall asleep. If everybody is going to start leaving shul and looking at their watch and talking to each other, that's called tircha de tzibura. That's a strain on the community. You're not allowed to cause a strain on the community. How many does that mean? Instead of 7 to 8, okay. They want to give the uncle, they want to give the grandfather an extra aliyah. People look at each other and say, all right. But then when they do a 9th, Then they start, my stomach is grumbling, I need to go home to eat. And they do a 10th, they start to throw things. By 11th, it's already fisticuffs. If they do too many aliyot, you're going to have a fight in shul. Because
When they're yelling from the top.
that's it. They're throwing not candies, they're throwing grenades. So you always have to weigh balance off. Of course, you are allowed to add an aliyah, and so each one becomes a little shorter. And there's rules when you're to stop. You can't stop too close to the end of a paragraph, to the beginning of the paragraph. You have to know how to do it. But you can add, but there's another value, and that is it shouldn't be onerous on the community. It should be difficult for them to wait. So, yeah.
But a question, because I never asked it, but this, because before, I always talk like parasha, everybody, is called up to read on the Torah, but they don't read on the Torah, they just say a blessing.
What's the deal there?
Yeah, what's the deal? Because you can Aliyah, but you don't read, you just say the blessing.
Right. So it used to be in the times of the Talmud that whoever was called up to the Torah read from the Torah.
Yes.
They still do that in some communities.
You're certified. And you know how to read.
Well, the only problem is you have to know how to read the Torah.
Of course.
And with the tune, with the proper pronunciation, with the proper, breaks at the right time. Not everybody, over years, it became that people were embarrassed. And they didn't get an aliyah. They didn't want to be called to the Torah because they didn't know how. And the rabbi said, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We want everybody to participate. We want people to honor the Torah. And people wanted to honor the Torah. So they created this institution called the Baal Koreh. The Baal Koreh is the reader. A professional reader. He stands up there for everybody. In Tefillah, it's called Chazan. For reading from the Torah, it's called Baal Koreh.
How old is Baal?
The Baal Koreh has to be bar mitzvah. In some communities, they have even a child.
When did we start using the term Baal Koreh?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it goes back to, I'm not sure. I think it got standardized in the Gaonic times, but I have to check that. But it became universal that there is this option. The person that gets called up to read, he should be reading, but he doesn't know how. So he can say the brachot. Everybody's taught to say the brachot when you're bar mitzvah. Every bar mitzvah boy, even if he doesn't know how to read from the Torah, he's taught to read the brachot. And then the reader reads from the Torah. Really, ideally, all of you, I want you to make sure. Next time you get an aliyah, you should be reading along with the reader.
That's like an idea.
Quietly, not to confuse him. The community wants to hear only one person so that they can hear what it says in the Torah. But you, because you are really making the bracha, you should be reading the Torah too. So you say the words together with him in an undertone, quietly. You can whisper it. And then you say the bracha out loud. And if you don't know how to say the words, you can follow along. Usually the Baal Koreh points.
The master of the reading.
Baal Koreh, that's right, the master of the reading. It's a strange phrase.
It's not like husband, like Baal. It's not the same.
No, well, master is a word used for husband and wife in the ancient world.
But
Master of the husband.
we understand that it's a master.
Right. Master, yeah, the guy in charge of the reading. Baal Koreh, in Yiddish, the Baal Koreh. The Baal Koreh, he can be a good one, he can be a bad one, he could have a nice voice, he could be too fast, too slow. We can fight about that all day long. It's so much fun. We can criticize. He does the wrong tune, and then there's of course different styles of music.
Like
There's a Sephardi Baal Koreh and an Ashkenazi Baal Koreh. Right? There's different kinds. Yeah.
In our shul, it's not often, but sometimes it happened that if you read something which is not right, that the guys start to say no. They don't say no. They say how it should be.
That's right. That's right.
Is that
This is, I think, the most popular sport in Orthodox Judaism.
most of this?
Unfortunately, it's actually can be very dangerous because you could be embarrassing someone. Let's say the Baal Koreh, he didn't prepare well enough. He doesn't know. It happens. Sometimes, people are busy, whatever it is. And so he's not reading the Torah properly. But you have to read the Torah properly. Everybody wants to hear it read the right way. So you correct him once, you correct him twice, you correct him every sentence. It becomes embarrassing for him. It's true, there are some shuls where you're not allowed to become a Baal Koreh unless you get tested. You have to be tested by the rabbis.
That should be all.
It should be. We should have precise reading. I'm in favor of that.
But stupid people reading from the Torah alternative.
I'm also in favor, though, of not embarrassing people in public.
That's like a Talmudic halacha, right?
That's really bad. To embarrass somebody. It says in the Mishnah on Pirkei Avot, better to throw yourself in a burning furnace rather to embarrass someone in public. And here we are, as I said, it's the most popular sport. So you have to be careful. When I was the rabbi of my community, I made up a rule. I said, nobody corrects, except for one person. There's somebody there next to the Gabbai is busy with his own calling people up. We appointed someone to stand next to the Baal Koreh and quietly correct him, quietly. And that's nicer. That's much nicer.
Like a rope attached to his leg and then
I'll tell you what we have. In many communities, it's becoming more and more popular. People have a sign language.
They do.
You've seen that? You've seen that? Stop.
So I want to know what is this an official thing or is it by community?
So everybody has their own little system together between the Baal Koreh and his helper, whoever the helper is. And sometimes all he needs is to have a little sign, hand motion, and the rest he knows, how to divide up the pasuk. Sometimes you forget a note, so you tell him, it's this note that goes in a circle. So it's sort of. It's not universal. It's not universal.
Universal has a sign language.
There's almost universal, but there's not universal. Yeah, there's some.
everyone has like their own.
Everybody's got some. Yeah, because it's not official. It's just unofficial. In some shuls, they consider that to be disrespectful.
Unknown that done this.
In some places, one second. In some places, they say the Baal Koreh should be properly prepared. He should know it in his heart, by heart. He should know it ahead of time, without any sign language. What is this? Is he blind?
He's human.
It's disrespectful. And so it's considered to be a lower level of a Baal Koreh if he needs to be reminded by the signer, the sign language. However, in many
it's funny. It's fun.
It is. In many communities, people are busy. It's become quite common that as long as the signer is quiet, it doesn't. I don't think it's so disrespectful. Sometimes, though, you have a problem that the signer gives not only sign language with his fingers, but he actually sings it out loud. He sort of feeds him the next few words. Let's say the reader doesn't know how to pronounce the words properly. So he will give him the words. This is already more problematic because I'm sitting in the crowd. I want to hear the words. Now I hear it twice. I don't know, who am I hearing? The Baal Koreh is looking in the Sefer Torah, or the guy who's helping him was just looking in his Chumash. We should be reading the Torah hearing the Torah from the Sefer Torah itself, from the scroll. So, but this is, as I said, the most popular sport in Orthodox Judaism. You sit there, and it's like the Olympics. Hold up a sign. 7, 9, out of 10. How good is he, right? So no, and usually you just yell out, "Hey, I found the mistake!" You're so excited, I found the mistake. You yell out. What's everybody yelling in the middle of the synagogue? We're trying to listen to the Torah reading, and this guy's yelling, "No, he said the word wrong." So it's best to appoint somebody to be in charge, and it should be done with decorum. And the ideal thing, of course, is that the Baal Koreh should be properly prepared. Okay? But yeah, next question. Yeah.
Like in practice in our place, what happened once was that when he read and they correct him, he read again, they correct him, he read again, they correct him, the same passage.
He just not getting it right.
They
Yeah.
called a little girl to the Torah.
That's something else. That's something
and
else.
she was looking on it, and then
I mean, she's young.
what
so
she
it's
saw,
Yeah.
something, there was some system. What
That's
is it?
something else. I'll explain. That's something else. That's what we've been talking about now, is how to properly read it, to pronounce the words, the tune, whatever, the parsing the sentences and so forth has to be just so. And for that we have the notation system, and you have to memorize it if you're a Baal Koreh. And sometimes people forget, so they give you signs. That's all assuming that the scroll itself is written properly. Torah scroll has to be kosher. All the letters have to be there.
Real Torah scroll is never proper.
It's correct. One mistake and the whole Torah is possible. There must be hundreds of thousands of letters. If one is missing, the whole Torah is not kosher. It can be fixed, but it can be repaired. But anyways, sometimes it happens. And they're reading, and in your case, it sounds like the Baal Koreh was reading it wrong, and everybody was correcting him, and he said, but that's what it says in the text. Uh-oh. Maybe the Sefer Torah is not kosher. So, if it's a letter missing, no question. You close the Sefer Torah. If you're lucky enough, you bring out another Sefer Torah. You take that Sefer Torah after Shabbat, you'll take it to the Sofer. Sofer Stam. You remember what that means?
Stam.
Stam is? Rashi Tevot. It's an acronym for Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah. The scribe who writes these three ritual objects, right?
Confusing, because I thought the top would be Torah.
Tefillin and Mezuzah, yeah. It should be Setatam. But it's Stam. Okay. So they take it to the Sofer afterwards. But this Shabbat, if you have another Sefer Torah, you bring out the other Sefer Torah. It's a little bit of a problem because people are waiting. Takes a lot of time to take out, put the Sefer Torah back. But what can you do if the Sefer Torah is pasul? The Rambam is very lenient on this. And he says even if it's a Sefer Torah pasul, if the community is reading it, it's kosher, it's okay. They don't have to delay matters. Yeah, very, very lenient. The Rambam is very lenient on that. But the custom is in most places, if you find a mistake, you switch the Sefer Torah. What happens if you're not sure? If it's not that there's a letter missing, there's a letter that's a yud. Let's say the word is Anochi. The way it's written in the Torah, the beginning of the Ten Commandments, right? Okay. I, Anochi, I. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God. So if it has an extra vav here, it's not kosher. For sure, no question about it. Extra vav, you got to take out a new Sefer Torah, that's not kosher. What if, instead of, there's no extra vav, the problem is the yud here, the scribe made it longer. What does it look like?
Wow.
Looks like a vav. Of course, I'm not doing the proper script, the font. This is script, and the font in the Sefer Torah is, more, special, different font. But it's the same idea. In the Sefer Torah, it would be this is a yud, and this is a vav. It's the same idea, okay? Or whatever, to make it a little more, like a Sefer Torah, it would be like this, and the yud would be like this little chupchik here. Okay. Anyways, you can see they're very similar. So you're not sure, is it a yud or is it a vav? So one of the systems is you ask a young child who just learned how to read the letters. Because if you take an adult and if he looks at the word, he knows the words. There's no word anocho. There's no such word. So just from the context, he'll know. Your eyes work that way. That you read with the context, and so he'll say it says anochi, but we don't want that. We want each letter has to be formed properly. So you take a child who only knows letters. Some rabbis, what they'll do is they'll take a piece of paper like this and like this, and they'll ask the child, what letter is that? If he says it's a yud, it's kosher. And if he says it's a vav, it's not kosher. That's right. The child, so yeah. It depends on the circumstances, which there's other, sometimes it can be not kosher. Let's say it is, there's a break in the nun over here. The letter's broken, it's not kosher.
Wait, what about in some places in the Torah where we actually see like the letter actually being broken, like in the
not kosher then. It's not kosher.
In the Machon, in the Parashat HaShavua, or reading with the Rav Lisman, we've seen letters that are like bigger or shorter. Or
those are on purpose. That's on purpose. Sometimes
on purpose letters, I mean.
That's supposed to be. That's our tradition.
Break. That's different.
There's no break in the letter. There's break in verses, can be written in different ways, and there's special letters. There's small letters and there's big letters. But
so in the Chumash, it can be broken on purpose. In the Torah, no breaking.
Right, correct.
Why is the Chumash some few letters?
They're not really broken on purpose in the Chumash. They're smaller or bigger. That's not broken. That's not kosher. It's not kosher. No, I don't see any Chumash that's written that way. Maybe the ink jumped off in the printing press. But
Rabbi Lisman literally said that there was like a letter that literally had a space in the
could be that the ink, the printing was.
He literally said no. The ink didn't jump off. It was printed that way. He literally said that.
Strange. I don't know why. I don't know. You have to
It's not really like that.
show me the example. I don't know. But anyways, that's about reading from the Torah. That's why they called up a little ink. You're gonna guess what the letter looks like. If it looks like a yud, it's because there's rules. Obviously, if it's all the way down to the bottom, then just everybody will read it as a vav. There's no question. But sometimes it's questionable, and there is that system, that mechanism of using, a small child. All right. Okay. Anything more about reading from the Torah? What's the parsha this week? Pinchas. That was last week. Pinchas was last week. Pinchas was last week. Not in Chutz La'aretz. Outside the land of Israel, last week was Pinchas. And this week, yeah, they had a different site. They're on a different time frame than us. This week, they read Matot and Maseh. Yeah, anyways, well, we can't repeat the whole shir now. Pinchas is, you should know though, last week was your parsha outside of Israel. In Israel, it's 2 weeks ago. It was Matot. Now we're on Maseh, and in Chutz La'aretz they read Matot and Maseh, double parsha. Okay.
There's less parasha of the book.
That's right. And what do we say at the end of every book? Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazak. Yeah, it's a nice custom. Yeah, some people say nit chazak, some people say nit chazek. Different versions. They're all kosher. It's okay. It's not. May we be strengthened. Chazak is a charge to others. It's a greeting. It's a wish, a blessing. May you be strong, and nit chazek. May we be strengthened. Right? And that's marks the end of the book of Bamidbar, and then we start the book of Dvarim. Baruch Hashem. So let's get ready, because what day is today? It's already Tuesday? Monday. Today's Monday. Yom Sheni. Rosh Chodesh is, you tell me when. If you were in Shabbat, in Shul the Shabbat, we announced when is Rosh Chodesh. We did Birkat HaChodesh. Right? We announced when is the Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Menachem Av. Don't forget Menachem Av.
Father Menachem.
That's it. Menachem counsel. Console. Menachem is to console. Right.
I have 3 rabbis with Menachem.
Really?
My first Rebbe in Eretz was Menachem, and
Amazing. Well,
Menachem.
yeah. A lot of Chabadnikim call their children Menachem.
He was not Chabad. He was not Chabad.
He was not?
No, he was.
Because the last Rebbe of Chabad was Menachem Mendel. That was his name. So it became a very popular name.
The current one was the current.
There is none.
It was that special that they decided to not make a new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. It's a real shame. It's also unfortunate, some people get confused. They were so attached to this leader, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, that some people said he was the Messiah.
He's delusions and he's Mashiach.
As long as he was alive, no problem. As long as he was alive, maybe he'll build the Beit HaMikdash. But once he died, you can't say he's Mashiach any longer. Unfortunately, some people still do. And it's very problematic.
Every post that says that he is Mashiach or was Mashiach, all these things, that's Avodah Zarah. Like literally, it's Avodah Zarah.
Not literally Avodah Zarah. It's they're not bowing down to it. They're not worshiping it. They're just.
They go that far.
I'll tell you the problem why you might call it Avodah Zarah is because it could lead to Avodah Zarah. Because there is another group of Jews once upon a time who their leader died, and they declared him as the Mashiach after he died.
And then the problem was it started converting.
And we all know that they ended up worshiping this man. It's not only did he become Mashiach, he became a god. And so that's why people are saying maybe it's Avodah Zarah. But just saying somebody's Mashiach is just wrong. It's just it doesn't turn it automatically into Avodah Zarah. If you turn that person into a god, then that's even worse. But yeah.
And when they would convert, go into their sect, they would not make them, actually they Judaized their new little fabricated sect, and it became this big.
The whole point is that there's no more sect, that there's no more people. It's just whoever believes, whoever has faith. But that's something else. Anyways, so it's a dangerous little quirk of history. It just happened 30 years ago. When did he die? How long did the Rebbe die? In the 90s, yes. So it's not so long ago. But
it's also problematic if they put the picture of him inside the shul.
Yeah.
From a Ferrari perspective, yeah.
Yeah, it's a problem. Can't put images in.
Right. Okay, anyways, let's get prepared for Rosh Chodesh Av. Rosh Chodesh Av is on this Friday. So we need to use these books to get ready. We have a few minutes. Let's do some halachot of Rosh Chodesh Av, of the month of Av, and then we'll do the laws of Tisha B'Av next week. Page 162. When Av arrives, we curtail our joy, because this is a period of mourning over the temple's destruction. Therefore, one should not engage in joyous activities. 162.
Wait, no sex for 9 days?
Didn't say that. Only on Tisha B'Av is sex forbidden.
Unless it's Shabbat, then it's Friday, you can do it.
Social gatherings, unless it's educational or for health reasons, you need to take a vacation. It is customary, now this is nowadays we don't really weave our clothing on a loom anymore. A loom is a place where you put the threads and then you weave, right? It's called shti, the warp and the woof in English. It's the threads that go in this direction and then the threads that go in the other direction, right? The warp and the woof. So the warp is called shti. Shti, why is it called the shti? Because that's the foundation. Those threads are constant. They're put on a big beam and they're tied, they're pulled off, and then they go on a wheel, and then you go from section to section. But the warp is like constant. Shti, it's a foundation. That's what the word shti means, foundation. And what do we commemorate? What was underneath the temple on Mount Moriah?
Stone.
The stone is called Even HaShtiyah, the foundation stone, foundation rock. Right? The bedrock of the Mount Moriah is called Even HaShtiyah. the place from which the world was founded. Tradition says that's, we don't know exactly how it worked, ask the evolutionists exactly, but the first formation of this planet Earth comes from the place of the Beit HaMikdash. That means that all material is also coming from the spiritual world. It's called Even Hashtiyah. So there's a custom developed, don't string on the loom the warp strings as a commemoration, which are called shti. It's commemoration of the Even Hashtiyah. That's the next paragraph on page 162. It's customary to refrain from arranging the warp strings on a weaving loom during the 9 days. The basis for this is the fact that the function of the foundation stone, Even Hashtiyah, upon which the Holy of Holies stood, and which is the foundation of the world, was abrogated, meaning destroyed. Therefore, we refrain from arranging the warp strings, which are the foundation of a garment. And don't knit new clothes and those kind of things. Most of us are not knitting, and so we don't have to worry about it. We see there's other more important customs which do bother us, and that's on page 163. Okay, now one other thing I want to show you before what we're going to read for the most part of the next 15 minutes of today's lesson primarily is the Ashkenazi custom. Why? Turn to page 179. It's the last page of this chapter.
No one here is Ashkenazi.
I am.
Yeah, follow the dude's arms.
It's Torah. We're learning it as the Word of God. It's the way Jewish people practice their Judaism, even if it's not your personal practice. And it's not absolute. We're going to see that some of the customs are even in the Sephardi communities as well. But if you look on page 179 at the bottom, 179 at the bottom, okay? It says the laws of the week in which Tisha B'Av falls pertain only to the Sephardic custom, which maintains that one may not cut one's hair or wash clothes during that week, as the Mishnah states. Ashkenazim, however, are more stringent and refrain from washing clothes from the first of Av. That's what we're starting to learn now. In addition, Ashkenazim and some Sephardim are stringent throughout the 3 weeks regarding haircuts that we spoke about already. We know that we don't cut our hair. If you turn the page, though, this year is special. Page 180 at the top of the page. 180 at the top of the page. A year in which Tisha B'Av falls out on a Sunday does not have a week in which Tisha B'Av falls, as the fast begins immediately after Shabbat. When the customs of mourning pertain to the 10th of Av end, so do all the customs of mourning that pertain to the 3 weeks. When Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbat, that's this year, the fast is postponed to Sunday. Some say that since the 9th of Av is actually Shabbat, the entire week beforehand is considered the week in which Tisha B'Av falls. Most poskim, however, maintain that since the fast is actually observed on Sunday, that year does not have a week in which Tisha B'Av falls. Most Sephardim follow this position, but not all. Therefore, they may wash clothes the entire week before Shabbat Chazon. Shabbat Chazon is the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, the Shabbat of Tisha B'Av. However, it is proper, Rav Melamed says, that even Sephardim be stringent with regard to shaving in such a situation. That is, they should refrain from shaving throughout the previous week in order to enter the fast with a recognizable sign of mourning on their faces, as explained above, note 7, we're going to see that soon. Those who are lenient have an opinion to rely on. Some Sephardim are not going to do any of the customs of mourning this year, except for Tisha B'Av itself, or the 10th of Av itself, because the week of doesn't exist, right? And so, according to some opinions. Let's go back now and see what are those customs during the week of. It does. Well, the truth is, I heard on the radio the chief rabbi of Israel yesterday, the day before. I was driving in the car and I turned on the radio. I think we're just talking politics, Biden, and politics. And so I turned to a Haredi radio station, or a religious radio station, I don't know which one it was. And they were having a shiur from the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef. And he said, even Sfaradim should not be listening to music for the 3 weeks. We don't have the custom of not bathing. We don't have the custom of not eating meat and wine. We don't have the custom of getting married. We're lenient regarding getting married because it's such a big mitzvah to get married. So we let you get married up until Rosh Chodesh Av. Ashkenazim don't. But when it comes to music and mourning the temple, even Sfaradim should not be listening to music for the entire 3 weeks.
What did Chacham ben Zion Meir Uziel say regarding that?
I don't know. Do you know? There's many rabbis have. Do I know what each rabbi said about everything? There's a debate about what his father said. And since he is his son, usually what he says has some weight to it. He said his father wrote a tshuva that for somebody who was depressed, they can listen. No, the tshuva was about a radio station, like one of these religious radio stations. And they said to him, they came to Rav Ovadia Yosef, his father, and they said, if we don't put on music with instruments, people will not listen to the religious radio station and they'll go listen to the non-religious radio station. They'll hear all sorts of lyrics about love and, come to me baby, and I won't go more into it, but they'll hear all sorts of, who knows what's on those other stations. We want people to be listening to the Jewish radio, to the religious radio station. And so Rav Ovadia Yosef said, you can play music for the entire 3 weeks. Rav Yitzchak Yosef, his son, explained, and this was his point in this yesterday, when I heard him on the radio, and he said, don't be misled. People quote my father that he allowed it. That was just for the sake of people that don't know any better. If they're gonna do worse. But if you ask me, should you be listening to music during the entire 3 weeks? No. Sfaradim should not be listening to music for the entire 3 weeks, even though the other laws and customs are delayed until the beginning of Av. Okay? I don't know what every chief rabbi said. I don't know.
Yeah, because Chacham ben Zion was not educated in the Bach Yeshiva, but Rav Ovadia was. This is something my Sephardi friends, I'm quoting them. This is something they brought to me.
It's too easy. It's too easy. These rabbis are tremendous scholars with hundreds of influences on them. Because once he stepped foot in an Ashkenazi yeshiva, that means that everything he says is assimilated. He's not real Sephardi. It's so simplistic. It's so simplistic. Everybody has different influences. It's true. Sometimes they can be influenced by other traditions, but it doesn't mean that every psak halacha of his is not kosher now, or it's not considered pure Sephardi. He reads all the sources and he makes his call based on his knowledge and understanding of the communities, many communities. Just because he saw an Ashkenazi custom, that means he's not a proud Sephardi anymore. That's too simplistic. Anyways, page 163. The custom which is most pertinent is eating meat and drinking wine. Okay? The Rishonim had a custom to refrain from eating meat and drinking wine during the period of mourning over the destruction of the temple. Some observed this stringency every weekday throughout the 3 weeks, while others did so only the week in which Tisha B'Av fell. Most Rishonim maintain that proper practice is refrain from consuming meat and wine during the 9 days. Okay. According to the Mishnah, the prohibition on eating meat and drinking wine only applies to the Suda Mafseket, the final meal, before the fast of Tisha B'Av begins. Nonetheless, the Rishonim adopted the stringency of refraining from consuming meat and wine during the entirety of the 9 days because meat and wine are known to bring joy. The sages said, when Av arrives, we curtail our joy. Furthermore, when the Holy Temple was destroyed, we ceased bringing meat offerings and pouring wine libations on the altar. Consequently, it would have been proper to abstain entirely from eating meat and drinking wine until the temple is rebuilt but we are unable to withstand such a decree. Let me tell you the story that the Gemara in Baba Batra 66b tells. I think there was a group of people who, after the temple was destroyed, they decided we're never going to have meat and wine anymore. If there's no meat on the altar for Hashem, we shouldn't have meat. If there's no wine, libations on the altar, we shouldn't have one. Rabbi Yehoshua, I believe, said, let me take care of this group. Because they were being extremists. Rabbi Yehoshua came to and said, my dear children, I see you don't eat meat and wine. Why? He said, well, there's no meat and wine on there's no more sacrifices anymore. There's no libations. He said, well, okay. What about, there was a sacrifice of bread too, right? The showbread. They said, you're right. We didn't think of that. We won't eat any more bread, ever. No bread, because how can we eat bread when there's no bread in the temple sacrifices? He said, well, what about fruit? There was the bikurim. It was brought out next to the altar. So they said, wow, okay, we cannot bring ourselves to eat any fruit, any. They were really, really extremists. And then he pulled out his trump card. And he said, there was a sacrifice in the temple of water. The water libation. Now they realize they're in trouble. And they said, oh, Holy Rabbi Yehoshua, help us. Help us. What do we do? And he said, let me teach you. To go on with life as normal, as if nothing happened, we cannot do. The temple was destroyed. It was the center of our religious life. But to stop life altogether, we cannot do that either. Because we have a life to live. Hashem wants us to live our lives. And so what we do is as follows. We eat the normal food, and we drink, and we eat meat, and we drink wine. We even have celebrations and parties. But at each party, we leave off one dish. And then he says, when a woman gets dressed, in those days there was a formal set of jewelry that she would wear. She takes one off. Doesn't wear the full set. And when you paint your house, when you plaster the walls of your house, you leave a small area unfinished. And that's what we do. We commemorate the destruction of the temple, but we have to go on and live our lives. And that became halacha until today. So this idea that the meat and the wine, it started with meat and wine, because the meat and wine is symbolic of the temple service. And so that's why we're more machmir on eating meat and wine during the 9 days. We don't partake of. Meat and wine is very indicative of the temple service more.
Is
But
the thing on the wall, not painting, leaving the spot unpainted, that's the whole week, that's it. Whole year.
Yeah, the whole year long. All of these is the whole year long. The truth is we don't do pretty much any of them anymore. I don't know of anybody that leaves off a piece of jewelry. I don't know of anybody that leaves off a... Nice.
I just noticed when I just took them.
Okay. I don't know anybody that takes off a dish. And I do know some people that it's become more popular now that we leave a section of wall without plaster. The reason is because I believe our society has changed. This was a day, Rabbi Yeshua was speaking about a system of jewelry which everybody knew. You take one off, it would be noticeable. The salads, the dishes that were served, there was a set order. Everybody did the same thing. So you take one off, it's noticeable. But we don't do that anymore. Society's changed, so there's no. So for hundreds of years, many Jews did not leave this amah by an amah. So hand's breadth by a hand's breadth, arm's length, whatever it is, however you translate amah. That's what the the simple law says you must, but for many years Jews never did that. Now it's becoming more popular. I don't know, I guess we have bigger houses and people are maybe more aware of the Beit HaMikdash than they were before, or they're more into showing off that they're so religious. For whatever reason, it is becoming more and more popular that people do this custom, one out of the three, of leaving an ama unplastered. Some people, instead of doing that, they put up a picture of the Yerushalayim.
A picture of the Yerushalayim?
Picture of Yerushalayim to commemorate the destruction. Some people put up
With temple or without?
all kinds. All kinds.
So with the
Different
mosque?
customs. With the mosque, that's a sign of the destruction, right? It's a little weird to have a picture of the mosque in a Jew's home, but many people don't know the difference. Anyways, it's good to remember Jerusalem all year round. And we talked about music last week. Remember? We talked about music. We said the simple law is we don't listen to music all year long. The custom changed. We do listen to music all year long. We're more machmir during this period of the 3 weeks, of the 9 days, as we're going to see. Yeah, question?
This unfinished plaster ama, it should be inside of the house or it could be outside of the house?
It's usually inside the house. Yeah. Outside we don't plaster usually. Usually there's bricks or.
Like I feel.
It's supposed to be inside. It's supposed to be inside. It's supposed to be inside. Opposite the door. Some people put it next to the door, opposite the door, somewhere around there. It's hard to define.
I saw that in one house.
Yeah.
And I thought it's a nice fresco.
Ah.
It's like, what is this
Yeah.
fresco?
Yeah.
I'm kind of confused about this. It says it is forbidden to stroll in public places on Tisha B'Av, since this is likely to bring one to laughter on Tisha B'Av. Stroll, what does that mean? Just like walk or?
You're right. I think that depends on the context. But with the laws of Tisha B'Av, we're going to cover next week.
Yeah.
Where you read ahead. You're reading ahead. But the idea is to not forget the Avelut. On Tisha B'Av, you shouldn't just do leisure activities.
Like go walk to
Walking on the boardwalk is not the right time to do that. You should be sitting at home and mourning, not.
But if you're
going
like, you've been reading all day and you're like fasting,
Yeah,
and
you
you go
could-
outside a little bit, around the block.
Yeah, I don't think you're violating the laws of
Really
Tisha
not
B'Av.
violating. Yeah, all right.
Anyways, good. Any other questions for today?
You can't greet people. You can't. there's all
That's
this
Tisha B'Av. That's next week. We're not up to that yet. Yeah, I answered you just to be nice, but the laws of the 9 days is what we're going to focus on today, tomorrow, and the next day. Okay, the laws of the coming week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the laws of the 9 days and the laws of the week. I still can not clear if I understand it exactly. That now how is that connected with the week and those 9 days? I really.
I'll
I've not changed if they are here.
I'll conclude with this. Again, when we have the month of, should I do right to left or left to right?
As you want.
I'll do left to right. Tammuz has 30 days, right?
Yeah.
Then comes the month of Av.
Yeah.
Also has 30 days, okay?
Mhm.
The 9th of Av
Is here.
is when we fast
Yeah.
for the destruction. 17th of Tammuz is a fast. Okay? In between them, there are 3 weeks.
21 days.
The 9 days starts on the 1st of Av. The 1st of Av. Rosh Chodesh Av, that's this Friday.
Yeah.
It's approximately 2 weeks after, or minus 3 days. It's 10 days later, right? From the 17th to the 1st, 17th to the 30th is 13 days,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, now, when is Shabbat? It depends. Shabbat could be here, could be here, could be here. There is a custom that the morning, the most intense morning, only starts on the Shabbat. Before the week of Tisha B'Av. The week that has Tisha B'Av in that week. In other words, we don't mourn on Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a longer week. It depends when Shabbat is. Shabbat could be.
What about Rosh Chodesh Av?
So Rosh Chodesh Av, we'll talk about tomorrow. If that's the Ashkenazi custom,
That's when they apply.
and many Sephardim,
Right.
they say, I don't care when Shabbat is. Then you could have 3 or 4 days or 5 days of mourning. It depends. Right? Depends on when Shabbat falls during the week. Is it on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday? Depends how many days of mourning you have.
But there's Sephardim who apply to that.
Sephardim say the entire 9 days.
Okay, not bad.
All the way. I don't care when Shabbat is.
Sfaradi.
Also Sephardim.
Also.
And Ashkenaz.
Some Sephardim. Some
Oh,
Sephardim. All Ashkenazim. All Ashkenazim start the 9 days. Right, through 3 weeks. And the 9 days, it doesn't matter when Shabbat is. But according to the Sephardi poskim, you'll say, we don't have to keep laws of mourning for the entire 9 days. It's only the week of Tisha B'Av. Could be 3 days, could be. This year, Shabbat is here. Shabbat is on the 9th
Right.
of Av.
So if you're.
It's funny that they're both
So
on the
according to
Shabbat.
some Sephardim, well, it's exactly 3 weeks later, so that's why they're both on Shabbat. Right? So according to them, there's no week of. There's no. It could be 0, 0 days of mourning because
Interesting.
the week of Tisha B'Av is that day. That day is Tisha B'Av, and that's the common custom of most Sephardim. That this year in particular, there's no week of, because the mourning only starts on Shabbat, and that's the day that you mourn.
What's Sephardim?
Or
do this?
actually
There's
the next day.
specific, like.
This year is the 10th. We actually fast on the 10th of Av, right? This year.
Yeah, yeah.
So we do have sort
Yeah,
of.
yeah, yeah. Is it like specific Sephardim, like Yemenite or Moroccans who do this? Or
There is. I'm not sure
You're
exactly who it is. We're going to read it. He wrote here Kaf HaChaim, I think.
And where
Yeah,
in
I'm
all
looking
of
for
there
it.
is the Sfard?
Sfard are Ashkenazim,
Ashkenaz.
for the most part. They're Ashkenazim, and the first of Av starts the 9 days. We'll continue tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem.
תודה רבה. בעזרת השם.